One, two, three.
Welcome to Scéalta. My name is Joe Austin, and if you've just joined us, can I remind you that Scéalta is a joint production from Fáilte Fiiste here and Féile an Phobal. And my guest hails the whole way from America. And in our research that we were doing around him, probably we've discovered all the things he didn't want to tell us about, but we've discovered about them. And normally when we're doing these programs, of course, I would tell that. If I told this man's story, I suspect you wouldn't believe it. So Jim Devine, welcome to Scéalta. How are you? And I hope you're well.
I'm excellent, Joe. Thanks very much for having me.
From the Falls Road to the lofty heights of America, a long time ago,
1964 at age 20. I was looking for a bit of adventure, so I got on a ferry boat in Cork, a ship at sea, and went into New York 7 days later.
It is a remarkable journey. It is, I mean, when we were trying to put, as I say, pieces of it together, Rockdale Street, for anyone that doesn't know it, in the 60s was in the middle of West Belfast to Falls Road. It was an area renowned for its poverty, for its lack of opportunity, for the need for people to, as you say, get out and try and get some kind of a future. Tell me about your childhood in Rockdale Street.
Well, I'll tell you, we played football in the street, and there wasn't two cars in the whole street. It was, a busy time, lots and lots of youngsters, not a lot of money, not a lot of opportunity for any of the people that lived there. And my own father was a bus driver who could have been a great man, but got no recognition because of where he lived. And but he was a noble fella. And Rockdale Street was a busy place. In addition to that, I spent my summers in Cavan, where my parents came from. And that was a big thing for me.
Your mother, you've talked about your father, the busman, quiet man by all accounts, a very clever man, a very studious man, if that's the way to describe it. But I'm also told from former neighbours of yours that your mother was a remarkable woman.
Well, she was. She would give Sonny Liston a left hook he would never forget. My mother was the disciplinarian because my dad was at work. And she used to say to me, she'd be coming after me and I'd put up my hands to say, I'm innocent. And then she'd say, don't raise your hands to your mother. And I'd drop the hands and a left hook would come in that would sort the head out a wee bit. And it made me stronger for the street struggles that I get into later on.
Well, we talked about the poverty levels in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Were you aware that you were living in a socially and economically deprived area?
I felt as rich as any man you could imagine. I had family that were great. I had friends that were great friends. And nobody reminded me that I was in poverty at all. Now, I know that material wealth is the thing that's allegedly important, but I found that the wealth that was given to me by my father and mother and my uncles and aunts and so on was priceless. And there's no amount of money could buy it.
You're a young man. I also spoke to someone who went to school with you. And again, I'm not prepared to name them, but they said that you were a clever clog. You were quite bright at school.
Oh, I don't know about that. I didn't like doing homework and stuff. If that's a sign of brightness, then I'm as bright as a man could be.
Oh, I would say their description of you is much better than your modesty, and the rest of your life will testify to that. So you leave school. Did you have any job before you embarked on this great adventure?
Yeah, I went to work in a law firm in downtown Belfast behind City Hall, an outfit called Crawford and Lockhart, owned by a couple of English lords who happened to be rather nice fellas, even though the word English became poison to me once I got to America and started getting involved. But law clerking and stuff was a no future in it for me. I was looking for a bit of adventure. So I decided I would leave and go to America. So I thought that would be an easy thing to do. But the leaving was very difficult, saying goodbye to people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you went to America. Probably people go to America. The whole mistake of going to America now is different from 64. I mean, people go to America and they're home the following year for a holiday, but you're going to America in 1964. You might never be home.
Yeah, it was 12 or 15 years before I got a serious chance to go home. And the first thing that happened to me when I landed in New York is I'm living in the New York City area, and they want me to draft me into the army and ship me off to Vietnam. I'm saying, the hell with that. So I joined the National Guard over here, which is like cowboys and Indians, and that kept me in New York State. And so I spent 5 years mucking about with that, rather than join the regular army and get stuck in a place like Vietnam.
Did you receive any advice on your departure to America from Ireland? Did anybody take you aside and say, listen, son, this is what you have to do?
Not a word. No. I know. I probably, I just decided I was going to go. The only advice people were saying to me, like, why the hell don't you fly? Do I look like I'm in a hurry? And a trip by sea seemed like a bit of an adventure, which it was.
And did you go to family members, or who did you go out to?
I went out to a family called Frank Baxter, and his wife lived in Brooklyn. And I couldn't get a family member to sign the documents to allow me to go to America, but this man did. So when I landed in there, I stayed with him and his wife and 3 children in Brooklyn until I could earn enough money to get an apartment of my own and live in Manhattan.
I have to say, you come from a very close-knit family, a very loving family, and almost overnight, well, not literally overnight, but within a relatively short space, you're propelled into the capital of the world almost, and you're on, effectively, although you have friends, you're on your own. Did you find it difficult?
I think the hardest part was leaving.
Leaving your mother?
Leaving uncles and aunts that treated me so well, with the summer holidays and all that stuff, and saying goodbye to them, and other friends that I had was difficult. Then when I was on the ferry boat leaving the coast of Ireland, I remember looking back and seeing it was a misty morning, and Ireland and the people disappeared. That was like actually a shock. I said, my God, they're all gone,
Well, I have to say, just for clarity, you may have not been able to see Ireland, but you have never in your life, taken your eyes off Ireland. And we'll come across that as we develop. Yeah. So you're in New York, you're living on your own, you're in the National Guard. What began your union involvement?
Well, after about 12 years being a union member and never being involved, I had an issue with the supervisor who was annoying. And I went to the union and I said, lads, you got to take care of this guy. Like, he's a bit of a madman, So they were all afraid. So I said, well, give me your badge and I'll put it on me and I'll sort him out. So I took the job as a union steward. Then what happened is the union big shot comes up to work with me, and he's palsy-walsy with the management guys. So I said to him, how do you get your job? He says, every 3 years there's an election. I said, well, I want you to know that, when's the next election? He says, November. I says, well, I want you to know I'm running for your freaking job. And I won that, representative job. And then there was a 3-year term. So the president of the union didn't care for me very much either, because I kept suggesting that we send our people to proper training at university, Cornell University and so on, to train the union stewards. And he was unhappy with me. So I told him in a year ahead of time, I says, look, I'm running for your job now. And when I took it, I had no idea the doors it would open. Like, I was unimaginable. So a nasty situation with a supervisor turned into being something that turned my life put me in arenas I never dreamed of.
It's fairly commonplace now. It has been for a number of years that when we listen to reports from America and we see the makeup, for instance, of Joe Biden's cabinet, that many of the names that pop out are Irish names. And I know you personally know many of them and know the background of them. Was America a difficult place for an Irish immigrant in the 60s? Was it a hard place?
Actually, I found that I hung out with a bunch of Irish people when I landed, and I found that wasn't the smartest thing to do. They had interests that weren't the same as mine. So I decided to move off to Brooklyn, and where I just worked with Americans. And the reception I got from them was astonishing. Nothing but the kindest people. They love Irish people. And I live in a small mountain village now in northern New York. And the people here are just totally remarkable. And nothing but kindness and love of Ireland and its people.
Wonderful. I mean, and I suppose that and I'm looking through pages of your achievements, they're all in front of me, they're all just off camera. And I suppose it's reciprocal, your own history. And I said to you earlier on that you always, and Austin, you always had a reputation of reaching a hand out to the newcomer, whether it be in the unions or whether it be. Tell me, just because I'm interested in that innovation that you talked about of sending union members through university. Where did that come from?
Well, I noticed that union stewards were out there trying to fight battles with corporate American executives, and they didn't have any background or training, and they were flying by the seat of their pants. There's a labor studies program at Cornell University, so I suggested that we send some of our fellows there. And when I became the local president, I sent our stewards all there. And in the end of the day, they were far more capable. They were interacting with other local unions and other branches of other types of unions. And they grew leaps and bounds from it. And they were able to challenge and do great work and to form bonds. When we had a wee struggle going on, we would get the help from them other lads to cause havoc. I mean, to do what we had to do.
You should say resolve problems. That's
what I meant to say.
That's what you meant to say. Walter Mackin once said about taking the man from the bog, but not the bog from the man.
Yep.
I think if we just scratched you a wee bit, you're still a Falls Road man, and the terminology comes through.
I think I am too. And I tell you the truth, I miss Ireland. I love to get back. It means an awful lot to me. It's like a piece of me is still there. And it's connected to those childhood days that most people today would consider impoverished, and I considered wealth beyond imagination.
Well, can I tell you this, and I'm going to touch on this as we go along this interview. The Irish American community and people like yourselves who are the friends of Ireland in every aspect, there would be no peace process in Ireland without the work that you had undertaken and the work that was carried out and the influence that people like you and like yourself had with others in terms of lobbying and bringing the Irish question to the forefront. So there is a bit of you in Ireland now at the moment, and you call it a peace process. So you're not really that far away.
Thank you.
And we don't forget. And I want to take you through that. You're in America, you're a senior trade unionist, you're helping to reorganize the concept of union membership in terms of training. You're involved. I don't know how many disputes that I've came across that you've been directly involved in around conditions and working hours and safety regulations and all of that. But Ireland has never come off your agenda. So no. there's a famous incident, I don't know why you can recall it, sometime in the early 80s when you were involved in trying to promote the McBride Principles. Can you talk to me a wee bit about that?
Well, I went to a convention, the first convention with the Communications Workers Union, and I found that they had a foreign policy statement that went with the union, and it was like thousands of members present, 3,000 or 4,000 members present. And when I read it, I saw like the State Department of the United States wrote this thing about them and the loving friendship with England. So I almost had a kitten, you know. I said, what the hell is this? So I went up to the president of the union and I said, hey, what the hell is this? The English are, causing havoc in my homeland. And he was furious. He says, nothing you can do about that. Nobody's ever been able to change it. Well, I discovered that I learned the Robert's Rules of Order in about an hour, and I took the floor and I turned his cart upside down and modified that to his very great anger. Then I went to a New York State meeting where I found that they had there was like 3,000 branches of local unions present. And I saw the same kind of thing. So I went to address them, and I was asked to, with a wink and a nod, hold your fire and meet with the executive committee afterwards. So I took a chance and I said I would do that. Well, when I went in that room and I talked to the biggest, heaviest hitters in the country, they were all for, a whole bunch of them jumped up and says, will you join with us and we'll make this Irish Labour Coalition? So we founded that organization at that day. And that organization worked on the McBride Principles, hard and heavy, and we worked on getting Sinn Féin representation in America because we're tired of the one-sided stories. So that's basically how, and then we just worked hard at it.
But can I just say, you're saying there, and that was that, as if this was a weekend activity. This was lobbying, ringing, writing. It was going to meet guys. It was going for a coffee. It was explaining what was happening in Ireland. It was a considerable, Jim, if you don't mind me saying so, it was a considerable piece of work that you undertook.
Well, actually, I traveled 150 miles each way to go to meetings once a month, to meet with the head of the longshoremen and the transport workers, the biggest unions in New York City. They're wonderful, wonderful people. And together, every month, we got together and planned strategies and kicked bums all over the place. And one stage, the top guy we made was Teddy Gleason, the head of the longshoremen, was our president. And he got a call from the Irish embassy saying that Dick Spring wanted to meet him. I don't know if you want me to talk about that at all.
Oh, yeah, please do, yeah.
So Dick Spring wanted a meeting with Teddy. So Teddy says, Jim, would you come with me? Yeah, please. And I said, love to. And he told us, with every sincerity, like, oh, the great work you're doing here in America. We just had a brilliant agreement with Margaret Thatcher, and I almost threw up my lunch. But he says, we arranged the Anglo-Irish Accord, which is going to change life as we know it in Ireland, especially in the north, about discrimination and so on. I said, I had to hold back. I couldn't say what I wanted to say. I said, oh, that's wonderful. And we're looking forward to seeing that change too. He says, so what you can do for us, Teddy and Jim, is we want you to stop the McBride's Principles work as a show of good faith. And Teddy looks to me and he says, what do you think, Jim? I said, Dick, we're delighted to hear this grand agreement. And what we'll do is we'll monitor it for a year and we'll examine the results. And if the results are positive, we will begin to take steps to reverse what we're doing on McBride or whatever. Well, that's not what they wanted to hear. They almost had a canary. They are freaking choking up. And that was the last invitation I ever got to go to the Irish consulate. But it was a wonderful opportunity to. And then what's funny is I told him in a year we'd check. I went back in a year and I met Ivan Cooper in Belfast, and he was the man in charge. Yeah. And he told me that discrimination in Belfast was worse then than it had been before the agreement.
In fairness, I think Ivan Cooper realized the wisdom of what pressure that Jews were bringing to bear would force legal implementation of anti-sectarian laws and equal opportunity laws and all of that. You also have a reputation of being a family man. So tell me how you met your other half.
Well, I had another half with 3 children with my first wife, and my first wife and I are not together anymore. And I have a second wife, Bonnie, and I'm living happily ever after. And my kids are like not quite kids anymore. They're all around 50 years of age.
Well, they're still kids to you, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Christine, Teresa, and JT, my boy. So they all live and not too far off, and they're doing okay. So.
And do they have the same attraction to Ireland that you have had?
Not quite. One of the things one of my daughters is a union representative that's kicking rear ends all over the countryside. We're representing Red Cross workers and telephone workers and other character folks. She's out there working like a mad woman and doing it with strength and dignity. So my other daughter's got a couple of children, and she's being a good mother, and my boy is doing his best at his end of things, you know.
Well, you can probably see over my shoulder that there's a painting on the wall by a man called Robert Balla. And Balla is a really progressive artist. And he has, in the portrait behind me, there is James Connolly to my left and Padraig Pearse to my right. Not politically, but just with their stations. And you have been someone who has argued for many years about the recognition, and we're in the Connolly Centre. So tell me about the Connolly statue and the Connolly bust.
Well, what happened was, once I discovered that Connolly had lived in Troy, New York from 1902 to 1905, I decided that I'd like to see a monument put up to his memory. It just seemed like an idea that was worthy. And I was getting some opposition from some folks that were probably connected with the English government and others, suggesting that Connolly was a socialist. So, and I was doing radio talk shows and stuff to talk about it a wee bit. So I said to the speaker who called in with that line of chat, I says, well, you can call Connolly anything you want to. To the people of Ireland, he was our George Washington.
Great.
That was the end of that. That was the end of that. And the city gave us land, a bit of land down on the Hudson River. And we had I think about a 10-ton granite monument of stone from Vermont put on the ground. And then I had a young artist from Tralee, Paula O'Sullivan was her name, from Tralee. She was a young woman artist. She made this lovely bust of Connolly that we're so proud of. Then I had trouble getting it over to America because I was over in Dublin talking to shippers and gangsters. I mean, lads over there doing their stuff. And so I called back to America, and I talked to John Law, who was the head of the Transport Workers Union here, a lovely fellow, native Irishman, and on our team. And I said, John, I'm having a hard time getting this thing over here. It's, annoying as hell. He says, Jim, leave it to me. He had Aer Lingus fly it over and deliver it to my house 150 miles north of the airport. Delivered it by hand. There's a big bloody bust, twice the size of, And so, at the end of the day, everybody's saying to me, oh, you should have this on St. Patrick's Day. I said, St. Patrick's Day is usually the worst frigging day in the world. I'm not doing that. So I had it in the middle of August, and we all roasted to death, which was wonderful and damn nice change. And we had parades up through the city, and I had Sean McBride and I were working together a little bit, and he wrote a beautiful piece about Ireland being grateful to the city of Troy for having housed Connolly and being good to him. And I had Sean Cronin, who was an excellent, excellent man. He was one of my guest speakers. And I had Michael Flannery, who was the Irish, the Naid fame. He was a great friend of mine, and I used to spend about a weekend a month living in his house with him and his wife in Queens. I spent a weekend a month devoted to Michael and nice chat and over a cup of tea. And together we unveiled this wonderful monument. We had 2 days of celebrations.
And I have to say again, I mean, it's one of the few Connolly monuments that there are in the world. You know, we have a statue of Connolly outside here. There's one in Dublin. There's the one you have. There's only a handful of these that are around.
The Dublin one was after we did ours, because I invited Christy Kerwin, who was the general secretary of the Transport Workers Union down there in Dublin. He came over and helped unveil the statue, and he swore he would do something in Dublin. And Dublin has a fine statue across from Liberty Hall.
I had mentioned to you earlier on the changing dichotomy of the Irish American. You know, from the days when we were portrayed as potatoes and cabbage people to the highest echelons of society. And you've seen that at its very best, I think, when you had the lobbying with Clinton around the Good Friday Agreement. And I know you were involved in that, and I know that you were part of that whole. Has the influence see, this is what the British say about men like you, that you're a dreamer, that you are romantically attached, that you have no idea of modern life, that all that bunkum that we have to listen to. The Irish American community have became quite a powerful lobby in America. Is that fair to say?
It is. And the truth, what's also fair to say is, if there was a way to avoid politicians altogether, we'd get a lot more done. You know, politicians are brilliant with words that are meaningful, but actions that are lousy. You know, talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. So you do your best with what you got. And I have to say that it was Clinton who did make the difference and get Gerry Adams over.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember the only way I'd get somebody over here, there's a guy called Fran McCann from Belfast.
Yes, yeah.
I had him in my house illegally doing interviews with newspapers and radio stations and whisking about the place and stuff back in the day, you know. So we got beyond that. We got Gerry over, and that changed a lot of stuff. That was huge.
Can I ask you, and I'm asking you this very carefully, because I kind of know the answer. Your union work per se, you retired allegedly.
Yeah.
Then you became an inventor. Is that true?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So did you really retire, or is that another one of your? Yeah, maybe.
Well,
okay, but.
Well, I retired from representing the workers that I represented.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I sort of I feel as though Ireland got to a new stage of things, so I could sort of withdraw a bit and take a deep breath. I did invent a way to insulate windows and patented it here in the United States. And then I opened a manufacturing business for about 20 years and finally sold that off.
And how do you, well, you're not retired because you're doing this interview. You're a friend of Terry Sullivan. You're all of that kind of grouping of people who will never retire. And they'll certainly never retire from their interest in Ireland. How do you relax?
I'm going to say a word that's going to make you laugh. I play pickleball. Did you ever hear of it?
No.
It's sort of like table tennis and tennis mixed up. And it's a pretty hot, feverish game where you run around a lot and you have a paddle and like tennis almost. Only we play indoors and try to abuse each other as much as we can, playing hard and driving the ball into your gut and that sort of nice stuff.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
So I play about 5 times a week, a couple of hours each time.
And is it outdoor or indoor?
It's both. But because of the climate here, we're lucky we have a big armory with room for 3 courts, so we can play year round. So that's sort of like, I'm 77 now, and I was having trouble getting my socks on and saying, like, Jesus, the feet are getting further away. And now that I've been playing this game and running like hell and charging about the place, my feet are a lot closer and I'm far more flexible, and my belt loops are a lot looser.
I think you can only see me from the chest up, but there's a lot more like an iceberg. There's a lot more below the table than there is above the table now. So I might take that up. Well, when you're looking back over these years in America, from that young man who sailed from Cork with no particular plans but an adventure in his head, has it been the adventure that you were seeking?
In spades, absolutely. It's been huge adventure. And it's been, I went back to Belfast and actually met with people in Ballymurphy who were, did you ever hear of Christopher Devine?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, he set up that organization called Between in County Cork.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And the money that was left over from the Connolly fundraising thing, I donated half of it to that organization and half to an organization in Troy, New York. But what the hell brought that up? I don't know.
You were talking about that. You were saying about that adventure.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, in other words, there's so many more angles to the adventure we haven't touched on, but it has been an endless adventure, endless. And when you're surrounded by good people and kind people, which I have been, it makes it like life is like a bowl of bloody cherries here. You know, if I was any happier, I'd be two people.
I have to say, and I've never had the pleasure of meeting you, and I will at some stage, but you seem to be very positive. You seem to have a very, because there were times, like we mentioned Austin, your brother who died, you know, so part of that, there were difficult times along the way.
Well, my brother John was murdered on Falls Water Street.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. He was shot dead by the UVF.
Yeah, and the British, well, that was a conspiracy where the cameras on top of the Royal were turned off and the gateways that was locked every weekend was left open for the assassins to come through. And I was in the same room with him 2 weeks before. He was 37 years old and he was a nice fella and he deserved to live.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to die in a fight, but it's another thing to have militarily supported assassins come in to kill you.
Well, you probably know that families like John's family have been involved in the Ballymurphy massacre family and the Bloody Sunday massacre and so on. The families have been involved for quite a while to try and get truth over the deaths. Now, not only the deaths that occurred at the hands of the British, but the deaths that occurred in this conflict, which hopefully is far behind us all. And of course, the British are now attempting to change the rules that you can't do investigations, that there won't be any inquest, that there won't be any of the basic stuff. And it is American society, headed by Nancy Pelosi, who are preventing, hopefully forever, but at the moment, who are making it difficult for the British to implement this conspiracy.
Yeah.
And their interest about Ireland comes from the work of people like yourself.
Well, there are some very sincere, good people in government, even though I hold politicians in a special category that we will not speak of. Yes, there are some very good politicians out there and good people that are trying and have our interests and of justice and fair play at heart. And they keep a wee bit of pressure on, and that pressure resulted in Gerry Adams getting over here. That's big. That was a turnaround.
Yeah, of course it was. And I agree with you. You know, I don't think it's been disloyal, and I don't think it's been trivial. Peace is too important to be left to politicians. It's all our responsibility. Where I'm speaking to you now is the James Connolly Centre. And as you know, James Connolly lived not far from your own home on the Falls Road for a very important part of his life.
Yeah.
This centre is here, not least of all, because of the work that Irish Americans have done through fundraising in America, and particularly the trade union movement have done through it. And it's something I think that people can be very proud of. Can I ask you, just in terms of You know, in Ireland, Republicans in Ireland would have a very positive outlook at the moment. You know, there seems to be lots of support for a new type of Ireland, an Ireland that's a new design, where quality and all of the things that you require to live are built into legislation. How do you see America responding to that? Do you get a sense that there's a new interest in Ireland, or how do you view that?
I think the interest in Ireland has always been there, and it gets stronger at times and weaker at times. But I'm glad we're past interest that becomes around because of hunger strikers having to die and all those ugly, ugly, horrible things that had to happen that changed very well. It may not have seems to have changed things, but it did, because it set a fire in the hearts of people, especially here. It heightened the interest. Another thing that happened that heightened the interest was when we started. I've always believed that if you can affect the flow of cash to your enemy or your opponent, that you have their attention. And this killing their soldiers isn't worth a damn. What is worth a lot is if you can shut off the money to the big fat cats who control the puppets in government, you've got their attention. And that's why the McBride Principles were so important. And I've used the same strategy dealing with corporate America, where I've shut down some huge amounts of money flowing in a certain direction to an outfit that was killing us in the union struggle, every contract. And they'd force us on strike. When I found a way to influence the flow of money to them to a huge degree, the next thing you know, they had men out trying to have me removed from office, and I'm biting the hand that feeds everybody, and I'm an awful man. And I said, the hand that feeds you was around your friggin' throat a minute ago, and they'll kill you the next time. Well, the funny thing that happened there was we got a next contract 1 year early, first time in history. In other words, leave them. If you leave our cash alone, we'll be good to you. You know, so
I was gonna keep that to the end almost, because I spoke to someone who who knows of, but put it no stronger than that, of your reputation as a negotiator with bosses and with corporate America. And they described you as fearless. They said that and you have a reputation of being a nice person as well, I have to say. But they said that when you went into that room, something happened, and you didn't, to use their words, you didn't take any prisoners.
well, I tried to be polite, shake hands, and but if I had an enemy that I couldn't deal with, that wasn't listening and hadn't got their attention, I had to find a way to get their attention, and I usually found it. And I stuck on it as hard as I could, and then you begin to get somewhere, So,
is there anything left? You've had an illustrious life, and it's by no means.
Hopefully, it's not over yet.
But is there anything that you have planned that you have yet to do?
Well, the truth is, I've had a yearning to go home and wander the hills and lanes and all that sort of stuff. But I just keep my eyes open and try to be helpful to other people that have a need. Just take each day a day at a time. I don't have anything really high on the scale that says, "Oh, I have to achieve this," and I've given up the responsibility of taking care of the needs of the union workers, and my business is gone. And I'm saying, like, I've spent all these years working my behind off.
Yeah.
And everything that I ever read from I left school was to learn more about whatever field of endeavor I was in, like struggle and revolution and whatever. Now I find I have time to actually read a book just for fun. And I'm enjoying.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying I'm very happy and enjoying life.
You talked about that formidable left hook that your mother had. Was your mother a small woman?
She was not small, and she was the hardest working person on earth. You know, in Ireland in those days, in Belfast, we had no washer, no dryer. She washed the clothes for 9 of us in the sink by hand. When you wanted to have a bath, you had a bath in the sink with a washcloth. You know what I mean? I never even saw a shower until I came. I thought a shower was something you stepped out in the street. I come to America and I find out, Jesus, they have them indoors now. You know, so, but my mother worked like hell. She made wonderful meals that were a joy, but she also had a short fuse. And I tried to make sure I wasn't anywhere near her as much. I'd be out playing football and I might get a call in to say family prayers or something, which used to set me, oh, I'd say, geez, in the middle of a football game, getting a call to Jim, you're wanting. I'm saying like, Jesus, none of the other lads in the street get a call, Iggy, you're wanting, or Paddy, you're wanting, except that they eat something. I get called in to say the rosary or something. I'm saying like, what?
Well, I have to, I mean, you know, just an observation, it didn't really do you any harm.
Not at all. The scars, you know, to see the scars. No.
Did that drive that I spoke about, that people talk about, that you have, did it come from your mother? You know, you talk about her in a very endearing way.
She was a very, she was a very determined, hardworking person. When she was a teenager, she left a small country farm in Cavan. She took a train to Dublin, a boat to England by herself, and she trained and became a nurse. And she was a nurse in a hospital in Turnbridge Wells after Dunkirk.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So she saw a lot of stuff and came back to Ireland to beat me up. No, I'm kidding. She came back to Ireland and had 7 kids, and I was the oldest of the 7. So she was a great human being. Love her.
Tell me, this is the last question, because I know you have other stuff to do, and I don't want to be distracting you. How do you see the future, without asking you to predict the future? I mean, we've both talked about that influence that America has over policy, and you've talked a wee bit about how you make the difference and all of that. We would have great hope for change. Is that shared? Is that shared in America with the Irish community?
Very much indeed. Yes, we are yearning. I spent 30 or 40 years of my life embedded in the struggle from this end, living with the best of people and working with the finest of people to try to make a difference, and that never goes away. That desire, and most of all those people are dead and gone. And like I said, I've got a foot in a banana peel here, and
You haven't.
but,
You haven't.
but I'm having a great time at it anyway. But I'd say that the desire for change and for the new Ireland to show up, like, it's almost you get impatient waiting. And I was listening to some Irish politicians talking about, oh, it's not the right time to bring this subject up. I want to choke the buggers, you know. But the time is right. I mean, I remember Michael Flannery, who I loved and was my dear friend.
Oh, I knew him as well.
Yeah, so Michael and I'd be sitting around and he'd have his idea on what was the way to resolve the problem. And when he thought about Sinn Féin suggesting that they could actually do something politically, he sort of poo-hooed it. He says, you know, the politicians betrayed us every time, and they're the ones that hung the martyrs and shot them and did, you know, they were not good. Funny enough, we're looking at Sinn Féin's looking pretty wonderful right now, and so proud, so happy. It just gives you a reason to hope and push forward, you know. So
this is the last question. So I've had 3 last questions, but this is the last question.
No worries.
When are we going to see you? When are we going to see you in Ireland?
I hope in spring. And the COVID thing has kept me at bay, because I go every year.
Oh, I know you do, yeah.
And I have a wee house in Cavan that I had built on family land from hundreds of years ago. And I yearn for Ireland terribly. I mean, it's sort of like a drug addict needing a fix. Well, I need my walk in the mountains of Cavan and a wee visit here and there, you know. So I hope to be over in spring, and I hope to meet you and Harry and the rest of the gang.
You need, when you come back home, because this is your home. America is where you live. This is your home. But when you come back, you need to come to the Connolly Centre.
Oh, I'll do that.
You need to see the fruition of that work that you've been involved in for nearly, you said 40 years, it's nearly 50 years.
A long time. Long time. In a way, it's kind of a relief to read a book just for fun instead of studying how to kick somebody in the shins or, you know, do what you have to do to get the attention of an opponent. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back. I remember there was a Connolly statue near St. Kevin's School on the corner of, I thought it was called Hugo Street.
It is, yeah.
And you're down the road from that at St. James's somewhere.
It's a plaque actually at the dentist, which is now a dentist surgery where Connolly lived. It's still there and it'll remain there. We're the next 2 blocks down, and we have a Connolly statue just outside our front door that,
nice.
that we put up in memory of Connolly. And it's a wee bit strange that, you know, when you think of the work that you're doing, that you had a Connolly statue before we had a Connolly statue in Belfast beside where he lived. But we're all catching up on Connolly. So
yes.
Listen, I want to let you get back to what you're doing. Can I say this? I want to thank you for the work that you've been doing relentlessly for all these years. You talked about you know, you miss Ireland and you miss some of the things in Ireland. Ireland's a better place for knowing people like you. There wouldn't be a peace process without the work that you done and you encouraged others to do. There wouldn't be a Connolly Centre. You mentioned the success of Sinn Féin, and I can't speak for Sinn Féin, but a lot of the success that Sinn Féin is enjoying comes from the friendships that exist in America, and you have played no small part in that. So I want to meet you when you come home. I want you not to be so modest. By the way, you made it difficult for me to interview you because I asked you to send a portrait of yourself, a pen portrait. You sent 30 words that said, "Yeah, this is my name. This is where I live. This is what." You left huge chunks of your life out, but we found them. We found them anyway. So for being my guest on this special Scéalta, thank you. I've enjoyed your company, and I appreciate and I thank you for your work.
Thank you, Joe, and I look forward to meeting you. And I'm going to send you over a 6-pack of blue skies and a couple of sunny days, because when I think about Ireland, all I think about is raincoats and umbrellas, you know.
Well, just as you're saying, as we speak, it's a day for raincoats and umbrellas.
Oh, so, my God.
Thank you, Jim. You've been
Good
a
luck to
wonderful
you.
guest. Thank you.
God bless. All the best. Bye-bye now.